You just got the email, the one you've been waiting for. Your manager finally came through, and starting next month you're getting a $10,000 raise. You do the math in your head. That's over $800 more every single month. You feel lighter. You feel like you can breathe. You start thinking about what this means. Maybe you can finally stop stressing so much. Maybe you can start actually getting ahead. You close your laptop, and for the first time in a long time, you feel like things are looking up. Fast forward 12 months. You're sitting in your car, the nicer one you upgraded to a few months ago, and you're checking your bank account on your phone. And something doesn't add up. You're making more money than you ever have in your life, but your savings account looks almost exactly the same as it did a year ago. Your investments haven't grown much. You're still feeling that low-grade financial anxiety, that background hum of not quite having enough cushion, and you're wondering, where did it all go? I got a raise. I'm supposed to be doing better. Why does it feel like I'm running on a treadmill that speeds up every time I do? Here's the uncomfortable truth most people never realize until it's too late. Your raise might actually be making you poorer. Not on paper, not in terms of your gross income, but in terms of the only number that actually matters for your long-term security. What you keep and what you grow. And the reason is something called lifestyle inflation. It's quiet. It's gradual, and it's devastatingly effective at keeping people stuck in the same financial place for decades, no matter how much more they earn. I'm someone who spends a lot of time thinking about money. Not just the spreadsheets and the numbers, but the psychology behind why we do what we do with it. And if this video helps you see your finances differently, I'd really appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button and gave this a like. It helps more people find content like this, and honestly, it helps me keep making it. Now let's talk about what's really going on here, because I think most people have the wrong idea about how wealth actually works. We tend to think that getting ahead financially is mostly about earning more. If I could just get that promotion, if I could just land that higher paying job, if my side hustle would just take off, then I'd finally be able to save. Then I'd finally be able to invest. Then I'd finally feel secure. But here's what the data actually shows. According to surveys from the Federal Reserve and major financial institutions, somewhere around 60% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. And here's the part that might surprise you. A significant portion of those people earn six figures. We're talking about households bringing in over $100,000 a year who still report feeling financially stressed, who still say they couldn't cover an unexpected $1,000 expense without going into debt. How is that possible? How can someone earning well above the median household income still feel broke? The answer is lifestyle inflation. It's the silent wealth killer that nobody warns you about when you're climbing the career ladder. And it works like this. When you start your first real job, maybe you're making $40,000 or $50,000 a year. You live in a modest apartment. You drive a used car, maybe one you've had since college. You go out with friends, but you're not spending crazy money. Your lifestyle fits your income. Then you get a raise, or you switch jobs for a bump in pay. And something shifts. You start thinking, I've been grinding. I deserve to live a little better. So maybe you move to a nicer apartment. The rent goes up $300 or $400 a month, but you can afford it now. Maybe you upgrade your car. The payment goes up $200 or $300 a month, but you can handle it. Maybe you start eating out more, buying nicer clothes, taking better vacations. Each individual upgrade feels small and justified, but collectively they eat up your entire raise, and you end up in the exact same financial position you were before, just with nicer stuff. This is the trap, and it's not because people are stupid or irresponsible. It's because of how our brains are wired. There's a concept in behavioral economics called hedonic adaptation. It basically means that we adjust to new circumstances very quickly. That new apartment that felt amazing the first month? Within 3 months, it's just where you live. That new car that made you feel successful? Within 6 months, it's just your car. The initial pleasure fades, but the expense remains. And so we keep reaching for the next upgrade, the next bump in lifestyle, chasing a feeling of satisfaction that keeps moving just out of reach. There's another psychological force at play here too, and it's maybe even more powerful. Social comparison. We don't evaluate our lives in a vacuum. We look at what the people around us have, and we calibrate our expectations based on that. When you get a raise and move into a higher income bracket, you often start spending more time with people who earn more. Your reference group shifts. Suddenly the car you drive looks a little shabby compared to what your new colleagues have. Your apartment seems small compared to where your neighbors live. The vacations you take feel modest compared to what you see on social media. And without even realizing it, you start spending more just to feel normal, just to feel like you belong. This is why income growth and wealth growth are not the same thing. Let me show you with some simple math, and I promise to keep it straightforward. Let's say you're earning $70,000 a year. After taxes, depending on your state, you might take home around $54,000, give or take. That's about $4,500 a month. Let's say your total expenses, rent, car, food, everything, add up to $4,000 a month. That leaves you $500 a month to save or invest. Not amazing, but you're making progress. Now you get that $10,000 raise. Your gross income goes to $80,000. After taxes, you're taking home maybe an extra $600 a month. Here's where the fork in the road appears. Path 1. You keep your lifestyle exactly the same. You now have $1,100 a month going towards savings and investments. Over the course of a year, that's over $13,000. If you invest that in a diversified portfolio and earn something close to historical stock market averages, which have been around 7 to 10% annually over long periods, that money starts compounding. In 10 years, assuming you keep that up and earn an average return, you could be looking at well over $200,000 in new wealth. That's life-changing money. That's options. That's security. Path 2. You upgrade your lifestyle. You move to a nicer place, adding $400 a month to your housing costs. You get a new car, adding $200 a month. You're eating out more, traveling more, spending more on clothes and entertainment. Before you know it, that $600 in extra take-home pay is gone. You're still saving the same $500 a month you were before. Your income went up, but your wealth trajectory stayed flat. And here's the really painful part. You didn't just fail to gain ground. You actually lost ground because you raised the floor of your expenses. You're now dependent on that higher income just to maintain your current lifestyle. You have less flexibility, not more. You're more vulnerable to job loss, economic downturns, or unexpected expenses. Your raise made you feel richer, but it actually made you more fragile. This is what I mean when I say your raise might be making you poorer. Not in the obvious, immediate sense, but in the sense that matters most for your long-term financial security. The gap between what you earn and what you spend is everything. That gap is your freedom. That gap is your future options. That gap is what eventually becomes your investments, your emergency fund, your ability to take risks and make bold moves in your career. And lifestyle inflation quietly closes that gap every time your income goes up. Now, here's where I want to shift from the problem to the solution, because understanding the trap is only half the battle. The real question is, what do you actually do about it? And this is where we need to talk about something I call the first allocate rule. It's simple, but it's powerful. Whenever your income goes up, for any reason, whether it's a raise, a bonus, a new job, a side hustle taking off, you allocate a significant portion of that increase to savings and investments first, before you decide how much to increase your spending. I like to use a 70-30 split as a starting point. 70% of any income increase goes straight to your future. 30% you can use to improve your current lifestyle. So let's go back to that $10,000 raise example. After taxes, you're getting an extra $600 or so a month. Using the 70-30 rule, $420 goes to investments or savings automatically, and $180 goes to lifestyle. You still get to enjoy some of the fruits of your hard work. You can eat out a little more, buy something nice for yourself, take a slightly better vacation. But the majority of your raise is building your wealth, not just your lifestyle. And here's the key. You do this before you see the money hit your main checking account. You set up automatic transfers on the day you get paid. The money goes to your investment account, your Roth IRA, your 401k contribution, whatever makes sense for your situation, before you ever have a chance to spend it. Because here's another thing behavioral research tells us. We're really good at spending whatever's available. If the money is in your checking account, you'll find a way to use it. But if it's already gone, if it's already working for your future, you won't miss it nearly as much as you'd think. This brings me to an important psychological point. The real transformation isn't just about the money, it's about who you become in the process. When you consistently prioritize your future self over your present impulses, you're building something more valuable than just a portfolio. You're building discipline. You're building confidence. You're proving to yourself that you have control over your financial life, instead of letting your finances control you. Think about what it takes to resist lifestyle inflation. You have to track your spending, at least enough to know where your money is going. You have to say no to some things, even when you could technically afford them. You have to sit with the discomfort of seeing your friends upgrade their lives while you stay disciplined. You have to delay gratification, sometimes for years. Those skills, that mindset, that's worth more than any single paycheck. Because once you develop them, they compound too, just like your investments. And here's something else that changes when you start winning this game. You stop seeing the world purely in terms of threats and start seeing opportunities. When you're living paycheck to paycheck, every financial decision feels heavy. You're in survival mode. Your brain is focused on not falling behind, not running out, not getting hit by an unexpected expense you can't cover. Research in behavioral economics shows that financial scarcity literally narrows our cognitive bandwidth. It makes us worse at planning, worse at problem solving, worse at seeing the bigger picture. We make more impulsive decisions because we're stressed and exhausted. But when you have a cushion, even a modest one, everything shifts. You start thinking in terms of opportunity cost. Instead of asking, can I afford this? You start asking, is this the best use of this money? What am I giving up if I spend it here? That's a completely different question, and it leads to completely different outcomes. Let me give you a concrete example. The average new car payment in America right now is somewhere around $700 a month for a 6-year loan. Let's say you're thinking about upgrading to a newer car because you got a raise and you want something nicer. $700 a month doesn't seem crazy relative to your new income, but let's look at the opportunity cost. If you instead bought a reliable used car and invested the difference, say $400 a month, what would that look like over time? At historical average returns, that $400 a month could grow to over $200,000 in 20 years. Is a slightly nicer car worth $200,000 in your future wealth? For most people, when you frame it that way, the answer is pretty clearly no. But we don't naturally frame it that way. We think about the monthly payment. We think about how the car looks. We think about what our coworkers will think. We don't think about the invisible future we're trading away. This is why the big decisions matter so much more than the small ones. I know there's a whole genre of personal finance content about cutting out lattes and avocado toast. And look, those small expenses add up. I'm not going to say they don't. But the reality is, your 3 biggest expenses, housing, transportation, and food, probably account for 70% or more of your spending. If you're trying to build wealth, that's where the leverage is. Housing is the biggest one for most people. The general guideline used to be that you should spend no more than 30% of your income on housing. But in many cities now, people are spending 40, 50, even 60% of their take-home pay just on rent or mortgage. When your housing costs are that high, there's almost nothing left to save or invest, no matter how disciplined you are about small expenses. So when you're making decisions about where to live, you have to think about this as one of the most important financial decisions you'll make. Not just, can I afford this apartment, but what does this rent payment mean for my wealth building capacity? There's another dimension to this that I want to touch on, because it connects to something really important: your career. When you have savings, when you have a cushion, when you're not desperately dependent on your next paycheck, your relationship with work fundamentally changes. You develop what some people call walk-away money. It's the ability to say no. No to a bad job offer. No to an unreasonable demand from a boss. No to staying in a situation that's making you miserable just because you can't afford to leave. That changes everything about how you negotiate, how you advocate for yourself, how you make career decisions. When you're broke, you take whatever you can get. You accept the first offer. You stay quiet when you should speak up. You're afraid to rock the boat because you can't afford to lose your job. But when you have 6 months of expenses saved, a year, more, you can negotiate from strength. You can ask for the raise you deserve, and if they say no, you can look for something better. You can invest in your own skills, pay for that course or that certification that makes you more valuable. You can take calculated risks that people without savings simply can't take, and this creates a positive feedback loop. Better financial position leads to better career decisions, which leads to higher income, which, if you manage it wisely, leads to an even better financial position. The opposite is also true, and it's the trap that lifestyle inflation keeps people in. No savings leads to desperation, which leads to poor career decisions, which leads to staying stuck, which leads to more financial stress. Breaking that cycle is one of the most valuable things you can do for your future. Now, I want to be honest about something. Avoiding lifestyle inflation is hard. It's not just about willpower. You're fighting against deep psychological forces, social pressure, and a consumer culture that's designed to make you spend. There are entire industries, billions of dollars in advertising, dedicated to making you feel like you need more, like you deserve more, like you're falling behind if you don't upgrade. And people blow it. Smart, well-intentioned people blow it all the time. They hit a savings milestone and then immediately, quote, reward themselves with a big purchase that sets them back. They get a raise and feel like they've finally, quote-unquote, made it, so they loosen up on their discipline. They see their friends upgrading and feel left out, so they match the spending, even though it doesn't fit their financial plan. I get it. I really do. The pull is strong. But I want you to understand what you're actually trading when you give in to lifestyle inflation. You're not just trading money. You're trading time. You're trading freedom. You're trading your future options. Every dollar you spend on lifestyle upgrades you don't really need is a dollar that's not working for you, not compounding, not growing, not building toward the life you actually want. And here's the thing. The future arrives faster than you think. Those 20 years I mentioned when talking about compound growth, that seems like forever when you're 30. And then you blink, and you're 40, and then 50, and you realize that time passed whether you were building wealth or not. The question is just what you have to show for it. So what do you actually do? Let me give you some high-level principles that I think are worth considering. First, whenever your income increases, practice the first allocate rule. Decide up front what percentage goes to your future before you even see the money. Automate it so it happens without you having to make a decision each month. Make the default choice the smart choice. Second, audit your big expenses whenever your income changes. Look at your housing costs. Look at your transportation costs. Ask yourself, is this expense in line with my real financial goals? Or did I just drift into it because I could afford it at the time? Be willing to make changes, even uncomfortable ones, if you realize you're spending more than makes sense. Third, keep your identity separate from your possessions. This is subtle but important. When you tie your self-worth to what you own, to what car you drive, or what neighborhood you live in, you become trapped by lifestyle inflation. You can't downgrade even when it would make sense because it would feel like a failure. But if your identity is based on who you are, on your values, your skills, your relationships, your contributions, then your possessions are just tools. You can upgrade or downgrade based on what serves your life, not what protects your ego. Fourth, find your people. Surround yourself with others who value financial wisdom, who aren't going to make you feel weird for driving an older car or living in a modest apartment. The social pressure to spend is real, but it works both ways. If your friends are all trying to build wealth and make smart financial decisions, that becomes your norm. That becomes what feels natural. Fifth, give yourself permission to enjoy some of what you earn. I'm not here to tell you to live like a monk and never spend money on anything fun. That's not realistic and it's not sustainable. The point isn't to deprive yourself. The point is to be intentional, to make sure that when you do spend on lifestyle, it's a conscious choice that aligns with your values, not a mindless drift into expense creep. Here's the core idea I want you to take away from this video. Your income is not your wealth. The gap between what you earn and what you spend is your wealth. Lifestyle inflation closes that gap. Every raise, every bonus, every income increase is a choice point. You can let it get absorbed into your lifestyle, like water into sand, leaving nothing behind, or you can capture a significant portion of it, direct it toward your future, and watch it compound over years and decades into something that actually changes your life. The people who build real financial security aren't necessarily the highest earners. They're the ones who understood this principle and applied it consistently over time. They're the ones who resisted the pressure to upgrade every time their income went up. They're the ones who valued their future freedom more than present status. You have more control than you might think. Not control over the economy, not control over your employer, not control over the housing market or stock returns, but control over that gap. Control over what you do with your raises. Control over whether you let lifestyle inflation steal your future or whether you protect it. If you're watching this, it's probably because you're serious about getting your financial life on track. You're thinking about these things, and that already puts you ahead of most people. The question is whether you'll act on what you know, whether you'll make the changes that actually move the needle, whether you'll be the same person a year from now, or whether this is the moment where something shifted. I'd love to hear from you in the comments. What's one money decision you'd go back and redo if you could? Maybe it's a car you bought, an apartment you upgraded to, A lifestyle expense you let creep in without really thinking about it. Or maybe it's the opposite. A time you resisted the temptation and you're glad you did. Share your story. And if this video helped you see your finances a little differently, I'd really appreciate it if you hit that like button and subscribed. It makes a big difference for the channel, and it helps more people find this kind of content. Remember, your raise isn't automatically making you richer, but it could. It all depends on what you do next.